Hello everyone, I am Jackie. I am supposed to have met with Purple Group 1 originally, but unfortunately I had some glitches happen with my Blackboard for some reason. For the first 2 days, the small groups tab on my Blackboard just kept saying that there was no content until I reached out with Dr. Alarcon and she was able to help me out. But now, from now on forward, I will be meeting with you all in Purple Group 1. I'm looking forward to working with you all, to discussing the readings with you. But for this occasion, I will have to share my insight on the readings on my own. I did get to watch the video that you all posted, and I thought that you all had some wonderful things to share, and I think I can add on to some of the things that you have already shared. So I'd like to start off with the Efron and Ravid article and some of the key points that I highlighted that I thought were important to speak about. Just a little background I know that was like one of the first questions that y'all talked about at the beginning of the video is if we had experience with action research. I have actually done an action research project through my master's degree about 2 years ago. That was our major project for the degree. I did my research on the effects of parents supporting their children at home and how that affects their reading at school. And I did some work with teachers, with some parents, and I found that that research was very beneficial. At the time, I was a second grade teacher, and I was teaching reading for bilingual students in English. And so I found myself in a situation where most of my students were reading significantly below grade level, and so that became an issue. And we always talked about how, with my colleagues, about how it was very difficult to get support from home. But we then started talking about the why of the problem, and that's one of the ways that we began our action research. Was with a 5 why process. I don't know if y'all have heard of it, but it's basically starting with the question of why. Why is this happening? And then asking yourself again why until you find the root cause. And I found that that was a very great way to begin a research project. At the time, it had started as a project, but in the end, it really helped and benefited my students that I was teaching that year. Throughout the project, I was able to work with the students, with the parents, and in that case, we found that the root cause was that many of our parents really didn't know how to help our students at home. One of the biggest reasons was because of the language barrier. The majority of the students at my school at the time were from low socioeconomic or disadvantaged homes, and many of them also proceeded from immigrant homes. So many of the parents of my students did not speak English. So that already became a barrier for them to be able to help their children at home. The other barrier was that, being that they were immigrants, they weren't accustomed to the way that schooling happened here in the United States. So all of those were factors into why my students were struggling so much. So I decided to do an action research on that and see how I could support my parents so that they could support their students at home. And I found that that action research project was very, very beneficial, as I said. And well, starting with the Efron and Ravid article, I found one of the quotes very meaningful to me, and it said, "Instead of solving the problem haphazardly or blindly, following proposals by outside experts, this teacher decided that to improve her students' performance, a systematic approach was needed." And I think oftentimes we take in decisions that other people make. We take in the advice that others give us without really having any proof that that will work. And I think that makes all the difference, because so many times we hear proposals from people outside, either whether it be our principal, whether it be a colleague, an instructional coach, or someone outside of our classroom, and we make those decisions, or we follow those decisions based on their proposals, but then we don't really have proof that it works, and sometimes that can be very difficult. I really agreed with that quote, because instead of just following what others propose, there really should be a time where the teacher decides to follow a systematic approach to solve a problem inside the classroom. Another thing that I really liked from the Efron and Ravid article was that it said that research is intentional, systematic, and purposeful. And I couldn't agree more. When we do action research, we really need to think about what is the most purposeful way to go about the research, what is the most intentional way to go about it. When we do things in the classroom, it should always be intentional. And I think oftentimes we forget how important it is that every decision that we make is intentional. So that was another quote that I really found helpful. Um, Another quote that I found very important from the Efron and Ravid article was that educational research is usually focused on studying the process of teaching and learning, and that the researcher is usually an outsider, external to the particular context being studied, and puts an emphasis on being uninvolved, objective, and unbiased. And I definitely think that it's very important to be unbiased. So in that sense, I kind of started thinking about my action research that I conducted in the past. I was directly connected to the students that I was researching. So I wonder how that might affect the teacher who is researching her own students, because I feel like you're already kind of biased because you're already part of that situation. So I wonder if it's more beneficial to really be an outsider in the situation or to be an insider. So I don't know. Maybe perhaps the next time that we meet, we can have that discussion together. From the Marshall article, I found that quote that said, being concerned with a reflective knowledge in action. So I think it's important to be reflective. I definitely see the importance of being reflective as an educator. And I agree with you all when you were talking about there's only a point, to a certain point, where you can get with reflections. So you can reflect and reflect and reflect all day long, weeks long, months long, but if we don't do anything about it, if we're not responsive to the situation, our reflections are really not going to be very beneficial, neither to us nor to our students. So being reflective is crucial in an action research, but um, being responsive is so much more important as well. So they go hand in hand. You can't just be responsive without being reflective, and you can't be reflective without being responsive. So I think it's very important that as we reflect on our practice, that we're also taking action. And that's probably where the title action research comes from, because it's research where you're taking action. Um, and so it's very important that we have a reflective practice ourselves. I'd also like to share some insight from the PowerPoint that I found very helpful. Um, as I was doing the readings for the week and really reflecting on them, I was asking myself um, what exactly I should research. I'm still kind of questioning that. Or when should I research? Because there's so many things to research in the education system. So I really like the slide where it talked about the when. So it said that you research when you have an educational problem to solve, when educators want to reflect on their own practices, when you want to address school-wide problems, when teachers want to improve their practices, when educators want to participate in a research project. And I thought that all of those were very important in research. I think when you have an educational problem to solve, that's definitely a place where research can happen, or when educators want to reflect on their own practices. And that is something that is so difficult to get teachers to do. This year, I am working as an instructional literacy coach on my campus. It is a district position, but we serve individual campuses, so there's one of us on each campus, and we meet with program directors from the district quite often throughout the year. And right now, we're implementing balanced literacy in our classrooms, and it's so difficult. It's been so difficult to get teachers to be reflective on their work. I think for so many years we practiced so many other ways to teach literacy that for the past 5 years we've been trying to implement balanced literacy in our district, which, by the way, I work in Aldine ISD. It's been very difficult to get everyone on board, and I think action research would definitely be a way to prove that what we're doing is actually working. And I think that's probably like one of the biggest issues with our program is that trying to get people to buy into the program, because many argue that there are no results or that it doesn't really work, but there's really no research on if it's been working or if it hasn't been working. We kind of just say, oh, no, it doesn't work, or oh, yeah, I love it, it's great, I think it works really well for my students. But there's really no action research behind the scenes, and I think that's probably one of the ways that we could help get people to buy in or get people to try the work even. And I think that definitely, as educators, we really need to reflect on our own practices. Um, our position as literacy coaches is quite new. We began it about 5 years ago when we began balanced literacy in our district. However, at the beginning, there was only one district literacy coach for all campuses, so that was very difficult to get to help every teacher. And little by little, they have been adding to the position more people, and I think it's been great to be able to work together and to be able to reflect together. However, I think there's so much work that still needs to be done. And so I continue to think that as an educator, action research is crucial. And as an educator, we should really take the time to research, to reflect on our practices, and to solve those problems, to try to solve the problems that we face every day in the classroom. I really like the chart that I saw in the PowerPoint that was called Collaborative Team. I definitely think that it takes a team, it takes a village to really find a solution to issues in education. And I really like that chart because it talked about how students need to be involved, how community stakeholders need to be involved, how parents need to be involved, the importance of administrators to be involved, staff, and definitely teachers to be involved as a collaborative team where we're all looking for a solution to our problems. And well, I will be ending there. I have really enjoyed sharing my ideas with you. I am looking forward to working with you in our next meeting next week on Thursday. And hopefully everything goes well and we're all able to meet and there's no more glitches. I'm really looking forward to learning more alongside of all of you. And if there's anything that I can help anybody with, you have my contact information, so feel free to send me an email or send me a text message, give me a call. I'm available in the afternoons after work, of course, because I think we all have full-time jobs during the day. Well, I will end it here, and thank you so much for your attention.